Okay, imagine this. A child, maybe just learning to walk, completely captivated by a tablet screen. Every little tap, every swipe, even a giggle. It all sends a signal.
Right.
And behind that screen, there's an algorithm, quietly, invisibly, just adjusting itself.
Learning from every single interaction.
Exactly. And it offers up new stuff, things perfectly tailored to delight that child.
And the child, of course, learns and adapts too, responds to these things that the AI is feeding it.
It becomes this kind of continuous feedback loop, doesn't it? Human curiosity shapes the machine learning.
And the machine's output, in turn, shapes the human's development. It's happening constantly.
So here we are, we're in this world where our minds, human minds, and these artificial intelligence systems are just intertwined.
Co-evolving in real time.
And it's not just some, abstract tech shift happening somewhere else.
No, it's evolutionary. It's fundamental. Happening right now in our homes, at work, everywhere.
So the big question for us, for you listening, has to be, how do you navigate this? How do you not just cope, but actually flourish?
Right. Thrive in the middle of all this rapid recursive change.
And what if the secrets, or at least some clues, are hidden in lessons from, nature's biggest test, evolution?
And maybe also in a centuries-old mathematical idea about thinking through uncertainty.
That's what we're going to explore today. We want to unpack a framework grounded in some really solid science that could offer a kind of roadmap.
We'll look at why adapting is really your ultimate advantage.
Yeah, and how to think smarter when you're drowning in information.
And interestingly, how our own brains, forged by millennia of evolution, can sometimes help us, but sometimes hinder us too.
And really importantly, we'll connect it all back to concrete things you can use. Strategies for your life, your career. So let's get into it. Okay, let's kick off with a really big idea. One of the most powerful insights from history, right? Charles Darwin. He didn't actually say it's the strongest or the smartest species that survive.
That's absolutely right. It's a common misconception. Darwin's core insight, the one he laid out on the origin of species, was really that it's the species most responsive to change that thrives.
Responsive to change, okay.
Exactly. In nature's playbook, which can be pretty unforgiving, adaptability isn't just, a nice quality to have. It's the ultimate advantage, non-negotiable.
Makes sense. Environments always shift.
Constantly. Climates change. New predators show up. Competitors evolve. Organisms have to adjust their traits, their behaviors, or, they face extinction.
And that basic lesson from biology feels incredibly relevant right now.
Oh, profoundly. Because our world, our technological environment, our social environment, it's changing at this unprecedented speed, almost dizzying.
Yeah.
The same principle just applies directly to us, to organizations, to individuals.
And we see it so clearly in the business world, don't we? This adapt or die thing feels like natural selection sped way up.
Definitely. It's something that should really make you think about your own professional life, your career trajectory.
How so?
Well, look at the lifespan of large companies. It has shrunk dramatically. It's a stark illustration.
Okay.
Consider this. The average time a company stayed on the S&P 500 index was 61 years back in 1958.
Wow, 61 years.
Right. Now, fast forward to today. That average is less than 18 years.
Less than 18. That's a huge drop.
It's massive. And projections suggest that by 2027, something like 75% of the companies currently on the S&P 500 will be gone.
Gone, meaning?
Acquired, merged, or simply bankrupt. Vanished from the list.
That's incredible. So it's not just disruption, it's
what the economist Joseph Schumpeter called creative destruction, but it's accelerating.
Right.
And the corporate giants that do manage to endure, think about a company like General Electric over its long history. They don't survive by just stubbornly clinging to one strategy.
They have to reinvent themselves.
Repeatedly, shedding old parts of the business, acquiring new ones, pivoting completely sometimes, just responding to new market realities, new technologies.
Like evolution, variation, and selection.
Exactly. Organizations and individuals, too, have to continually evolve, or they just risk becoming obsolete.
And the classic example of not adapting, Kodak always comes to mind.
Oh, the classic cautionary tale.
Yeah.
Painful, really. For decades, Kodak was photography. They dominated the market with film.
Everyone used Kodak film.
Pretty much. And the deep irony is they actually invented one of the very first digital cameras back in the 1970s.
They invented it, but then
their leadership got scared. They worried it would cannibalize their incredibly profitable film sales. So they hesitated. They delayed a full pivot to digital.
A fatal hesitation.
It turned out to be. By the 2000s, other companies, faster, more adaptable ones, they just seized the digital market. Kodak couldn't catch up.
And ended up bankrupt.
In 2012, yes. They couldn't evolve. They couldn't let go of their past success. In evolutionary terms, you could say Kodak was this perfectly adapted organism.
For an environment that didn't exist anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A textbook case of maladaptation. Meanwhile, you look at rivals like Fujifilm. They didn't just pivot to digital imaging. They actually leveraged their chemical expertise from film
Right.
to go into totally new industries,
Right.
like cosmetics and pharmaceuticals. And they thrived because they adapted.
Okay, so if that's the lesson from nature, from the corporate graveyard, what does it mean for you, for the individual trying to navigate all this change?
It means thriving demands continuous adaptation. It's not optional.
And how do we do that? Practically.
For us, it translates into consciously generating variation in our own approaches, trying new ideas, learning new skills, maybe exploring different ways of working.
Experimenting.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then crucially comes rigorous selection.
Yeah.
You need to double down on what actually works best for you in the current environment, not yesterday's.
And letting go of things.
That's the hard part. Shedding attachments. Attachments to strategies or mindsets or even skills that were brilliant in the past but just don't fit anymore.
Ouch. That can be tough.
It really can. But evolution has zero sentimental loyalty to outdated traits. Neither should we cling to assumptions or ways of working that are no longer effective. You almost have to be ruthless with yourself about what's not working.
And the rise of AI is just pouring gasoline on this fire, isn't it?
Jobs are changing faster than ever. Absolutely. Faster than any climate shift in natural history, probably.
Yeah.
Automation and AI aren't just reshaping job markets, they're fundamentally changing the nature of work itself.
How so?
Well, some skills are becoming obsolete incredibly quickly, while others suddenly become critical. Entire job categories can rise or fall within, say, a single decade.
Wow.
Look at estimates from places like the McKinsey Global Institute. They figure that by 2030, up to 375 million workers around the world might need to switch job categories entirely
375 million?
and learn completely new skills because of automation's impact. Maybe 400 to 800 million people could be displaced from their current roles.
That just sounds daunting, like a massive wave coming at us.
It can feel that way, definitely. But it's vital to remember the other side of the coin. Disruption is always coupled with creation.
Okay, how?
New industries, new roles are emerging just as old ones decline. The World Economic Forum, for example, projects that while maybe 85 million jobs could be lost by 2025, around 97 million new jobs might be created.
So a net gain.
Potentially. These new roles are often in fields adapted to this new division of labor, the synergy between humans and machines, so the net outcome can be positive.
But there's a catch.
A big one. It depends entirely on whether individuals and society as a whole manage to adapt effectively. Through proactive reskilling, through continuous innovation, it's not guaranteed.
Which brings us to this really striking idea you mentioned, the half-life of skills.
Yeah.
That sounds alarming.
It's a powerful metaphor and yeah, maybe a bit sobering. The half-life of a skill is the time it takes for half of what you know about that skill to become obsolete or irrelevant. And that half-life has shrunk dramatically. Think back to the mid-20th century. If you mastered a skill set, it might serve you well for decades.
Right, learn a trade, do it for life.
Kind of, today. The average half-life of skills is estimated to be maybe 5 to 6 years.
Only 5 or 6 years.
And in fast-moving fields like tech, it could be as short as 2 to 3 years.
Wow. So what a student learns freshman year could be old news by graduation.
Realistically, yes. Which means adaptation isn't a one-time pivot. It's not just changing careers once.
It's constant.
It's a continuous, relentless process. Updating your knowledge, refining your skills, like an organism always adjusting to a changing habitat. It really emphasizes the constant motion required.
It does. It fundamentally changes how you think about skills. It's less about having them and more about the continuous process of getting them.
Precisely. It's an ongoing investment, not a one-time purchase you make and then you're set.
So the big takeaway from this whole evolutionary perspective.
I think it teaches us a mindset for resilience. First, expect change. Assume it's the norm. Second, welcome variation. Try new things. Don't be afraid to experiment. And third, ruthlessly select what works for you now.
Let go of what doesn't.
Right. The fittest in this age of AI won't be the ones clinging stubbornly to yesterday's strengths. It'll be the ones who can let go and evolve.
That sounds challenging, but also kind of empowering.
I think it is. because it means your potential isn't fixed. Your fate isn't sealed. You have agency in this evolutionary game. You can choose to adapt.
Okay, that's a really powerful message about adaptation from evolution. But if adaptation is about what we change, how do we make smart choices about when and how to change, especially when everything feels so uncertain?
Great question. That brings us perfectly to our second big scientific principle. If evolution is nature's algorithm for adaptation,
Yeah.
then Bayesian inference is, you could say, nature's guide for decision-making under uncertainty.
Bayesian inference. Okay, unpack that for us.
At its core, it's about continuously updating your beliefs, your predictions, as new evidence comes in. It's all based on Bayes' theorem, a surprisingly simple math formula from way back in the 18th century.
How does it work, basically?
Think of it like this. You start with an initial guess, an estimate. That's your prior belief.
Okay, my starting point.
Right. Then you gather new data, new information. You use that data, using Bayes' rule, to adjust your initial estimate. That gives you a more refined belief, your posterior.
Prior belief plus data equals posterior belief.
Essentially, yes. And then this is key, you just rinse and repeat. You never stop updating. Your new posterior becomes your prior for the next piece of evidence.
It sounds simple, but powerful.
It is profoundly powerful, especially in a world where we almost never have complete, perfect information about anything.
So why is this old math concept so relevant right now? It feels like it could be a real game changer for navigating all the noise and uncertainty we face.
Because we are just absolutely bombarded, aren't we, with information, with rapid changes, often unpredictable ones. It's often really unclear what the true state of the world actually is. Think about it whether you're a doctor trying to diagnose a patient,
Or an investor trying to forecast the market.
or even just deciding which news source to trust or which app to download. You're constantly making judgments based on probabilities with incomplete data.
Okay.
The Bayesian mindset forces you to acknowledge a critical truth. All beliefs are provisional. Every claim you make about the world has some degree of uncertainty attached.
Nothing is 100% certain.
Pretty much. And as new evidence comes in, you should be willing, maybe even eager to change your mind. Sometimes it's a small adjustment. Sometimes it might need a major reversal based on strong new data.
So the core message is be less certain, update frequently.
That sums it up beautifully. Be less certain, update frequently.
That really sounds like the heart of scientific progress itself, doesn't it? Always refining understanding.
It absolutely is. Science doesn't deal in absolute truths declared for all time. Scientists form hypotheses, those are their prior beliefs. Then they gather data, conduct experiments, and use the results to update their confidence in those hypotheses. It leads to this continually refined understanding.
And individuals can use this same approach.
Definitely. Think about an entrepreneur. They might start with a hypothesis. I believe customers will want this product.
Their prior belief.
Exactly. Then early sales data, user feedback, that's the evidence. It tells them whether to maybe pivot the business model, change the product, or persevere.
Instead of just sticking to the original plan no matter what.
Right. A Bayesian-minded entrepreneur treats their initial plans as hypotheses to be tested, not guaranteed winners. This helps avoid things like the sunk cost fallacy, throwing good money after bad, or just stubbornly sticking to an idea that clearly isn't working.
And this feels like a fantastic antidote to one of our biggest human flaws, our tendency to be way too sure of ourselves.
Exactly. Overconfidence is one of the most robust findings in psychology. Humans are often wildly overconfident in their judgments.
We think we know more than we do.
Precisely. And we're surprisingly slow to revise our views, even when the evidence against them starts piling up.
So how does being Bayesian help with that?
By consciously trying to assign probabilities to our beliefs. Not just a vague, I think this will work, but trying to quantify it. Okay, I feel about 70% sure this strategy will succeed.
Putting a number on it.
Yes. And then critically updating that number as new data comes in. After seeing the latest results, maybe I'm only 30% sure now.
That forces you to be more flexible.
It enforces cognitive flexibility. And it's a powerful guard against confirmation bias.
Yeah.
Our natural tendency to seek out information that confirms what we already believe and conveniently ignore or downplay evidence that suggests we might be wrong. Bayesian updating forces you to confront all the evidence.
Okay, so is this how our brains naturally work? Are we born Bayesians, or is this something we really have to learn and practice consciously?
That's a fascinating question. And the answer seems to be yes and no.
Ah, okay. How so?
Cognitive scientists have found compelling evidence that our brains do behave in ways that are remarkably consistent with Bayesian inference, at least in certain automatic processes, like perception.
Like seeing and hearing.
Exactly. Your sensory system is constantly combining your prior expectations about the world with the noisy signals coming in from your eyes and ears. It's effectively doing a complex Bayesian calculation to figure out the most probable cause of those signals, deciding what you're actually seeing or hearing.
Wow. Without us even knowing it.
Right. This has led to this really influential idea of the Bayesian brain. At a fundamental subconscious level, our brains seem wired to handle uncertainty probabilistically.
But there's always a but, isn't there?
There often is. While our brains might be doing this automatically for perception, our conscious, deliberate reasoning often falls way short of this Bayesian ideal.
Especially when numbers are involved.
Particularly then, when we're confronted with explicit numerical probabilities, people often make systematic errors. The classic example is the medical diagnosis problem.
Tell me about that.
Okay, imagine you're given the base rate of a certain disease in the population, how common it is overall. And you're told the accuracy of a diagnostic test for it, the true positive rate and the false positive rate.
Right.
Then you're asked, if a patient tests positive, what's the actual probability they have the disease?
Seems straightforward enough.
You'd think so. But study after study shows that the vast majority of people, including many doctors, get this wrong.
Really? How?
They often neglect the base rate, how common the disease is to begin with, and they dramatically overestimate the probability of having the disease just based on the positive test. They focus too much on the test accuracy itself.
So they ignore a crucial piece of information.
Exactly. In some studies, when the information is presented in standard probability terms, only about 4% of people get these problems right. That's basically chance performance.
Wow, that's pretty discouraging. Are we just doomed to be bad at this kind of thinking?
No, definitely not. There's a silver lining, a really important one. Research shows we can dramatically improve our Bayesian reasoning performance. A key strategy is simply changing how the information is presented. Instead of abstract percentages or probabilities, if you reframe the information into concrete natural frequencies.
Natural frequencies, what's that?
It means talking about counts of cases out of a specific number of people. So instead of saying the test has a 1% false positive rate, you might say out of 1,000 healthy people who take this test, 10 would falsely test positive.
Oh, okay. Thinking in concrete numbers of people.
Exactly. Our brains seem much better evolved to handle frequencies than abstract probabilities. When information is presented this way, accuracy on those tricky diagnostic problems shoots up dramatically. Visual aids, like tree diagrams, also help immensely.
So it's not that we can't think probabilistically, it's more about the format of the information.
Largely, yes. It seems our poor performance often isn't a fundamental inability, but an issue of representation. We can reason in roughly Bayesian ways when the information clicks with our evolved intuitions.
So, sometimes our gut feeling works, our intuition is okay, but other times we need that nudge, that different way of framing things to think more clearly.
Precisely. It's a mix. And it's worth noting that some researchers, like Gerd Gigerenzer, emphasize that our thinking often relies on simple heuristics, mental shortcuts, rather than full Bayesian calculations.
Shortcuts.
Yeah, rules of thumb. And sometimes these simple heuristics can actually outperform complex calculations, especially when data is messy or you have limited time.
Like what?
Well, the recognition heuristic is a famous one. If you have to guess which of two cities is larger, and you've only heard of one of them, guess that one. It's surprisingly accurate.
Huh. Simple but effective.
Right. Evolution likely gave us these shortcuts because they provide good enough decisions quickly with minimal mental effort. It's what Herbert Simon called bounded rationality. Not perfect calculators. We find ways to get by effectively in a complex world.
Okay, so pulling all this together, what does it mean for us? For thriving in this AI-shaped world? How do we apply Bayesian thinking?
Okay, a few key practical takeaways. First, consciously strive to be more Bayesian when it really counts.
High-stakes decisions, unfamiliar territory.
Exactly. Situations where your usual gut feelings or heuristics might lead you astray. This could mean actually doing the math sometimes, or using online calculators, or at the very least, mentally forcing yourself to consider alternative possibilities and weigh the evidence more systematically.
Like those super forecasters you mentioned.
Precisely. Those individuals who achieve exceptional predictive accuracy, they explicitly use Bayesian habits. They make numerical probability estimates, They update them frequently as new information comes in. They break down big, complex problems into smaller, more manageable ones to avoid overconfidence. It shows this isn't just theory, it demonstrably improves real-world judgment.
Okay, so be more Bayesian when it matters. What else?
Second, recognize the limits of your own intuition and actively build decision environments that play to your strengths.
How do we do that?
If you're presenting data, or even just trying to understand it yourself, use formats that make Bayesian logic easier. Use those natural frequencies, use visuals, use concrete scenarios.
Make it intuitive.
Right. And when you're interacting with AI outputs, say, an algorithm gives you a recommendation or prediction, treat that output as just one piece of evidence.
Not the final word.
Definitely not. Think, okay, the AI says there's an 80% chance this email is spam. What's my prior belief? Do I have other information like who the sender is that helps me update that 80%? Integrate the AI's input with your own judgment using that Bayesian filter.
Okay, good point. And the third takeaway?
Finally, and maybe this is the most crucial mindset shift, learn to embrace uncertainty rather than fearing it.
That's hard for a lot of people. We like certainty.
We do. But the future, especially with AI advancing so rapidly and unpredictably, is inherently uncertain. Gravitating towards forecasts that sound definitive, even if they're likely overconfident, is a trap.
So what's the alternative?
The Bayesian mindset teaches you to be comfortable with odds, with contingencies. Instead of betting everything on one predicted future, you think, okay, there's maybe a 60% chance of outcome A, 30% of B, 10% of C. Let's prepare mainly for A, but let's have a backup plan ready for B and maybe even C.
That sounds much more robust.
It is. It's far more resilient to surprises.
Yeah.
Think about military strategist John Boyd's OD loop. Observe, orient, decide, act.
Observe, orient, decide, act.
Okay, it perfectly captures these Bayesian principles. You're constantly observing new information, reorienting your beliefs based on that information, making decisions, taking action, and then immediately starting the cycle again by observing the results. It's this continuous loop of learning and adaptation, absolutely essential for dealing with unpredictable change.
Okay, this whole idea of continuous learning, constantly adapting based on new information, it really leads us to this fascinating new reality we're all living in.
Which is?
That we're not just adapting individually in this world, we're actually co-evolving with our technologies, especially our algorithms. It feels like this intricate dance.
That's a perfect way to put it, co-evolving. Because the principles we've been talking about, evolutionary adaptation, Bayesian updating, they aren't just happening in biology or inside our heads anymore.
They're in the tech itself.
Explicitly. Modern AI systems literally learn from vast amounts of data over time. They adjust their internal parameters, refining their models.
Yeah.
It's very much like how a brain learns or a species evolves.
Okay.
And this creates a fundamentally new dynamic. Humans and algorithms are now locked in this shared ecosystem, influencing each other constantly.
How does that work?
Well, we as users shape the algorithms through the data we generate, our clicks, our searches, our posts, our purchases.
Right, we feed them information.
And in turn, those algorithms profoundly shape our behavior, our choices, even our thoughts, by controlling the information we see, the options presented to us.
It's a two-way street.
Absolutely. So thriving in this world really requires understanding this two-way interplay. And crucially, learning how to consciously navigate these feedback loops, rather than just being swept along by them unknowingly.
Let's go back to that image we started with the child and the tablet. You said that really embodies this co-evolution.
It really does, in a nutshell. On one side, you have the child's brain, incredibly flexible, naturally curious. On the other, the algorithm, maybe a YouTube recommendation system, constantly adjusting what videos it shows, based on what the child clicks on, how long they watch.
The more the child watches cartoon cats,
the more cartoon cat videos the algorithm serves up. And the more it serves them up, the more the child's preferences, their tastes, maybe even subtle aspects of their cognitive development get nudged in that direction.
And it's not just one interaction.
No, it's this ongoing reciprocal loop, adaptation on both sides. Now multiply that simple loop by millions, even billions of people interacting with algorithms every day.
And you start to see how culture itself is being shaped.
Exactly. Cultural tastes, political opinions, collective behaviors. They're all being influenced on a massive scale by these new algorithmic agents in our environment.
Yeah.
YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, news feeds, they're powerful forces.
Which leads directly to all the discussion about filter bubbles and echo chambers, right? This worry that algorithms are just pushing us into narrower and narrower viewpoints.
Yes, that's been a major focus of research and public concern. The idea of a filter bubble is that personalized algorithms might only show you information or opinions that confirm what you already believe, effectively filtering out opposing views.
And the danger there is?
The worry is that this AI-driven personalization, especially on social media, could narrow our perspectives, amplify existing biases, and maybe even steer users toward more extreme content over time.
Is there evidence for that?
There is some evidence. Some studies have found patterns that look like radicalization pathways on certain platforms, where, for example, following the platform's recommendations, starting from a fairly mild political video, could, after a series of steps, land a user in much more extreme or conspiratorial content.
Okay, that sounds concerning.
It is, but like most things in this area, it's probably not quite that simple. The situation seems more nuanced. Well, other researchers argue that people aren't just passive victims here. Our own choices, our pre-existing beliefs and inclinations play a really significant role.
So we're not just being led?
Not entirely. Users with strong views, for instance, often actively seek out content that confirms their beliefs. The algorithm might just be efficiently supplying what those users are already asking for through their clicks and searches.
The algorithm is reflecting user behavior back at them.
To a large extent, yes. Plus, there's evidence that many people's overall media diets actually remain quite diverse, despite personalization. And some algorithms, if they're designed carefully, can even introduce you to new or unexpected viewpoints, serendipity.
So the reality is somewhere in the middle.
Probably. Algorithms definitely shape what we see, especially if we're just passively consuming. But users, particularly savvy ones, can exert agency. And importantly, the platforms themselves can design their algorithms to mitigate extreme narrowing or harmful rabbit holes. It's a choice.
Okay, so given this complex interplay, what does this mean for you? How can you apply this understanding of coevolution in your daily life?
Right, the practical side. We can boil it down to a few key strategies. First and foremost, awareness is key. Just recognizing that your information environment isn't neutral anymore. It's partially, maybe significantly, curated by algorithms that are responding to your behavior.
Like being mindful of your food diet, but for information.
Exactly. Be mindful of your information diet. A practical tip. Make a conscious effort occasionally to step outside your personalized bubble.
Wow.
Deliberately search for perspectives different from your own. Maybe use news aggregators that show a wider range of sources, or platforms that don't personalize quite so heavily, and then actively give feedback to the algorithm.
Like clicking not interested or downvoting.
Yes, treat your interaction as a two-way conversation. Remember, what you engage with trains the algorithm. So if you engage critically and seek out diversity, you might actually train it to offer you a more balanced diet over time.
Okay, that's useful. What's the second strategy?
Second, leverage the strengths of algorithms while consciously compensating for their weaknesses.
What are their strengths?
Algorithms are phenomenal at pattern recognition, raw speed, and handling massive scale. They can sift through data humans could never process, find correlations, personalize experiences for billions.
And we should use that.
Absolutely. Personalized learning platforms can adapt lessons to your pace. Recommender systems help us discover niche music or books we'd never find otherwise. Use these powers consciously.
But don't treat them as infallible.
Exactly. Treat an AI recommendation like advice from a helpful but sometimes biased assistant, not as a definitive command from an oracle. Take the Netflix movie suggestion, sure, but maybe also read a couple of human reviews before committing 2 hours. Integrate algorithmic advice with your own judgment.
Makes sense. And what about compensating for their weaknesses?
Their main weakness often lies in what they're optimizing for. An algorithm is usually tuned to maximize a simple proxymetric clicks, watch time, maybe ad revenue.
And that's not always aligned with their well-being.
Often not. It might promote sensationalist clickbait, because that gets engagement, even if it leaves you less informed or more anxious. So recognizing this potential misalignment is crucial.
How do we compensate?
As users, we can vote with our feet or our clicks, favor platforms or settings that seem to prioritize quality or user satisfaction or diverse perspectives over just raw engagement numbers. Maybe turn off autoplay features that are designed to keep you hooked. Support changes towards a healthier algorithmic diet.
This coevolution isn't just personal, though, is it? You mentioned it's happening on a societal scale, too, like in the economy.
Profoundly. In the economy, as AI takes over more routine or analytical tasks, humans are naturally shifting towards roles that leverage our unique strengths.
Like creativity, complex problem solving, Emotional intelligence.
Exactly. Tasks requiring creativity, intricate social interaction, critical thinking, ethical judgment, these are becoming more valuable. This is a kind of co-evolution happening right within the labor ecosystem.
And it leads to new kinds of jobs.
Yes. We're seeing the rise of what you could call human-AI collaboration roles. Think about medicine. AI can diagnose medical images, like x-rays or scans, with incredible accuracy now.
Sometimes better than human radiologists.
In some specific tasks, yes. But the human doctor is still essential. They combine the AI's findings with the patient's full history, their symptoms, their values, and make the final treatment decision, considering all the ethical nuances.
So it's a team effort.
It's a hybrid team. And studies are showing that these hybrid teams, AI plus human expert, often outperform either the human or the AI working alone. The human catches AI errors or adds context. The AI crunches the data incredibly fast.
So the narrative isn't just AI is taking our jobs, it's also AI can be a powerful tool to make us better at our jobs.
Precisely. Many professionals will thrive by embracing AI as a tool, extension of their own capabilities. But that requires adaptation.
Learning new skills.
Yes. Learning skills that complement AI. For a doctor, maybe it's interpreting AI diagnostic outputs. For a journalist, using AI to analyze massive data sets for a story. For an artist, using AI image generators as a source of inspiration, a starting point. It's about finding that synergistic partnership.
You also mentioned this can feel like an arms race sometimes.
It can. Think about disinformation. As AI gets better at generating convincing deepfakes, fake videos or audio, or writing human-like fake news articles.
We humans have to get better at detecting them.
Exactly. We have to step up our game in discerning truth from fabrication. Thriving in that context requires both individual vigilance, like always checking sources, being skeptical of things that seem designed to provoke outrage and collective adaptation.
Like education.
Yes, updating school curricula to teach digital literacy, critical thinking, source evaluation as fundamental skills for the 21st century. Just like our immune system develops antibodies against pathogens, society needs to develop cognitive antibodies against malicious uses of AI.
And ethically, this all raises huge questions, doesn't it?
Enormous questions. Are we guiding AI, or is it subtly guiding us? We need to strive for a truly symbiotic relationship, where AI amplifies our intelligence, our creativity, our empathy.
Not our biases or our worst instincts.
Exactly. And achieving that requires intentional design, thoughtful governance. AI ethicists stress the need to align AI objectives with core human values. We need to carefully define the fitness function for our algorithms, what counts as success for them, so that their success is genuinely beneficial for humanity.
So again, it comes back to us deciding what we actually want to optimize for as a society.
Precisely. And individuals play a role here too, by supporting ethical AI tools, by advocating for sensible policies, by participating in the public conversation. Our cultural choices, our values, will shape how these powerful technologies evolve. Co-evolving with algorithms means acknowledging we're in this intricate dance, and we need to actively manage our side of it. Educate ourselves, ensure they serve our interests, and adapt our own behaviors wisely. Those who find that productive partnership will be the ones who thrive.
Okay, finding that productive partnership, adapting effectively. It seems like there's always this tension, this trade-off we need to manage.
There absolutely is. And that brings us to another fundamental strategic principle, one that pops up everywhere in evolution, in business, in our own lives, the explore-exploit dilemma.
Explore, exploit. What does that mean exactly?
Simply put, at any given moment, you, or an organization, or even an animal, face a choice. Do you explore new possibilities, venturing into the unknown, or do you exploit known ones, sticking with what already works well?
Give me an example.
Think of an animal foraging for food. Does it stick with a familiar patch of berries that's reliably good? That's exploitation. Or does it wander off into a new part of the forest where it might find an even better patch, but also might find nothing, or even danger? That's exploration.
Okay, I get it. Sticking with the tried and true versus trying something new.
Exactly. And in your own life, you're constantly juggling this, leveraging your current skills, sticking to your routines, that's exploitation. Learning a new skill, trying a new hobby, moving to a new city, that's exploration.
And why is it a dilemma?
Because your resources, your time, your energy, your money are limited. Exploration is often costly, it takes effort, and the outcome is uncertain. It's risky. But if you only exploit, if you only stick to what you know,
you risk getting stuck, becoming obsolete if the world changes around you.
Precisely. Exploitation can lead to stagnation, especially in a rapidly changing environment like ours. Finding the right balance is key.
Does evolution offer any clues about how to balance this?
It does. Nature has developed mechanisms for this. Some species show what's called adaptive polymorphism. Different individuals within the same population naturally lean towards different strategies.
Like some are explorers, some are exploiters.
Exactly. Think of an ant colony. Maybe a small percentage of ants are programmed to roam far and wide, searching for new food sources. They're the explorers, while the majority stick closer to known trails, efficiently gathering from established sources, the exploiters.
And that mix helps the whole colony survive.
It maximizes the colony's chances. They find new resources through exploration, and they efficiently use existing ones through exploitation. Human populations also show a natural spectrum. Some people are high in novelty seeking, always trying new things, while others prefer stability and routine.
And in our current world, with AI driving so much change, this dilemma feels incredibly relevant, almost a daily pressure.
It is, intensely so, because the environment is changing incredibly fast and it's filled with unprecedented new possibilities. It pulls you in both directions.
Oh.
On one hand, there are just vast new territories to explore, new AI tools popping up constantly, entirely new career paths emerging, like prompt engineer, who saw that coming 10 years ago, new markets, new ways of working.
So much to potentially explore.
Right. But on the other hand, the sheer pace of that change makes constant exploration exhausting and risky. There's still immense value in buckling down, specializing, building deep expertise in a particular area exploitation.
So how do you find that sweet spot? Is there an optimal strategy?
Research in areas like reinforcement learning and cognitive science suggests some general patterns. Often the optimal strategy involves more exploration early on in a process when you know less.
Like early in your career.
Exactly. Your early career might be best viewed as an exploration phase, trying different roles, different industries, figuring out where your strengths and interests align with what the market needs.
And then later.
Once you find a promising path, you tend to shift more towards exploitation, doubling down, building deep skills, becoming an expert in that domain.
But you shouldn't stop exploring completely.
Absolutely not. That's crucial. Even when you're primarily in exploitation mode, a certain portion of your time and energy should always be reserved for ongoing exploration.
Like a percentage split.
You could think of it that way. Maybe for a mid-career professional, it's an 80-20 split, 80% focus on your core expertise and responsibilities, 20% dedicated to exploring new trends, learning adjacent skills, experimenting. That ratio might shift over your lifetime, of course.
A key is avoiding the extremes.
Definitely. Pure exploration means you never master anything. You become a dilettante. Pure exploitation means you eventually become irrelevant. You risk obsolescence.
How does Bayesian thinking fit into this? Can it help decide when to explore?
Yes, it offers a concept called the value of information. Basically, it asks, what's the expected benefit of the new knowledge I might gain by exploring, weighed against the cost or risk of doing that exploration?
So is it worth the risk to learn something new?
Right. A rational Bayesian agent might decide to take a short-term hit, like spending time and money going back to school, if the expected long-term value of the knowledge and skills gained is high enough.
But we humans aren't always perfectly rational about this.
We often aren't. We tend to undervalue exploration because its benefits are often uncertain and delayed, while the costs, time, effort, potential failure are immediate and tangible. We're biased towards the present.
So how can we counteract that bias?
One helpful mental trick is to consciously reframe exploration as an investment in future optionality.
Optionality, meaning having more choices later.
Exactly. Every new skill you learn, every new area you investigate, even if it doesn't pay off immediately, potentially expands your range of possible moves down the road. It gives you more options if your current path gets disrupted.
Like diversifying your portfolio, but for skills.
That's a great analogy. In an AI-driven job market where things can change fast, having a diverse skill set, maybe blending strong human skills like communication and critical thinking with some tech understanding, makes you much more resilient. Like genetic diversity makes a population more resilient to disease.
So a practical tip could be,
For every major goal you have that involves exploitation, like mastering your current role, consciously add a smaller, complementary goal that involves exploration, like spending an hour a week learning about a new AI tool or reading research from an adjacent field.
build exploration into your routine.
Yes. If you're a data analyst, maybe explore some basic psychology or design principles. If you're a teacher, explore a new educational technology platform, even if you don't adopt it immediately.
You mentioned companies do this too, with ambidextrous management.
Yes. That's a key concept in business strategy. Successful, innovative companies often manage this by having separate structures or teams. Some focus on efficiently running the core business, exploitation, while others are tasked with exploring new markets or radical innovations, exploration.
Like a research lab versus the main product division.
Exactly. Google's famous 20% time policy, where engineers could spend a day a week on their own projects, was a way to institutionalize exploration, and it led to things like Gmail.
Can individuals mimic that?
Absolutely. You can consciously partition your time, block out specific times in your week or month purely for exploration reading, experimenting, networking outside your usual circles alongside your core execution blocks.
And AI itself uses this explore-exploit idea.
Oh, heavily. Especially in reinforcement learning, the kind of AI that learns through trial and error, like game-playing AI.
How does it work there?
An AI agent often starts by making lots of random moves with pure exploration, trying to understand the environment. As it starts getting rewards for certain actions, it begins to favor those actions more. That's exploitation.
But it doesn't just stick to the first good strategy it finds.
Good ones don't. They usually maintain a small probability of making random exploratory moves, even after they've found a decent strategy. This is crucial to avoid getting stuck in a local optimum. A good solution, but not the best possible one.
Like AlphaGo finding new Go strategies.
Exactly. DeepMind's AlphaGo Zero learned Go by playing millions of games against itself. Through this massive process of exploration and exploitation, it discovered entirely novel strategies that human masters hadn't conceived of in thousands of years.
So what's the danger of too much exploitation then? Even for AI, it seems like you could really miss out.
The big risk is called premature convergence. The AI locks onto what it thinks is the best strategy too early, stops exploring, and misses an even better one that it might have found with more exploration.
And humans do that too.
All the time. Someone decides on their lifelong career path at 18 without exploring other options. Maybe they miss their true calling. A company doubles down on its current product and ignores warning signs about a disruptive new technology.
So we need to stay vigilant.
Yes, a healthy dose of vigilance for change is essential, even when you're mostly in exploitation mode. You need to periodically zoom out, rescan the landscape. Ask yourself, are the underlying conditions changing? Are there weak signals of a new trend I should investigate?
Like the pandemic forcing businesses to explore new models.
A perfect, if harsh, example. The pandemic forced massive, unexpected change. Those individuals and businesses that were able to quickly shift into exploration mode, trying remote work, new delivery models, different products, often fared much better than those who just tried to wait it out using their old playbook.
So mastering explore-exploit is really about strategic agility.
That's a great way to put it. Explore broadly when you're uncertain or the environment is shifting. Narrow your focus and exploit when you find a promising path and have good evidence. But never entirely stop scanning the horizon. The most successful people in this AI era will likely be those who get the timing of these shifts right.
Okay, all this talk about adapting, about exploring and exploiting, it feels like it all points towards one fundamental capability, doesn't it? The ultimate skill for thriving.
I think it does. It points towards learning how to learn.
The meta skill.
Exactly. In a world where technologies, skills, entire knowledge domains are evolving faster than ever, learning how to learn is arguably the single most important, most durable advantage you can have.
Why is it so crucial now?
Because the old model is broken. The idea that you get a degree, learn a set of skills, and then just work off that static knowledge base for 40 years, that's over. It just doesn't work anymore.
So what's the new model?
Thriving now demands cultivating what researchers call adaptive expertise.
Adaptive expertise? What's that?
It's not just about having knowledge. It's the ability to apply your knowledge creatively in new, unfamiliar situations, and the ability to efficiently learn completely new things whenever the need arises.
So you need to be good at applying and good at acquiring knowledge.
Precisely. We all essentially need to become professional lifelong learners. It's not just a nice to have, it's becoming a core job requirement in many fields.
What are the actual payoffs? If you embrace this, what tangible benefits do you get beyond just, keeping your job?
The payoffs are multiple and really significant. Cognitively, learning keeps your brain plastic. There's good evidence it helps stave off cognitive decline as we age.
Use it or lose it for the brain.
Pretty much. Economically, obviously, acquiring new skills is the best way to future-proof your career. People who regularly reskill, who learn new things, are much more likely to navigate job transitions smoothly without long periods of unemployment.
And psychologically?
Psychologically, adopting a learning mindset is strongly linked to resilience. It fosters what Carol Dweck calls a growth mindset, the belief that your abilities aren't fixed, that you can develop them through dedication and hard work.
Versus a fixed mindset where you think you're either good at something or you're not.
Exactly. And people with a growth mindset, they tend to embrace challenges. They see setbacks not as proof of their inadequacy, but as opportunities to learn. They persist longer. In this fast-paced AI era, that kind of attitude is absolutely crucial for bouncing back from disruptions.
So being a lifelong learner isn't just about taking the odd online course. It sounds like a much deeper, more strategic approach.
It is. It's a fundamental shift in how you view your own development. A strategic approach involves maybe 3 key parts.
Okay, what are they?
First, you need to actively identify valuable emerging skills. What's becoming important in your field or in adjacent fields? What skills are likely to be complemented by AI rather than replaced?
So scanning the horizon, like we talked about with exploration.
Yes. Second, once you've identified a skill, you need to figure out the best way to acquire it. Is it a formal course? Self-study, finding a mentor, working on a side project. The most effective method will vary.
Right.
And third, this is often overlooked, but absolutely critical. You need to integrate that new knowledge. You have to apply it in your actual work or life to make it stick.
Use it or lose it again.
Exactly. The principle of memory consolidation requires application. If you take that data science course, you need to immediately find a small project, even a personal one, where you can apply those methods. Active learning, creating something, solving a problem that's far more effective than just passively consuming information.
Can AI itself help us with this lifelong learning process, or is it just creating the need for more learning?
Oh, absolutely. AI can be an incredibly powerful tool for learning. We're seeing the rise of intelligent tutoring systems, personalized learning platforms.
How do they work?
They can dynamically adapt the content, the pace, the difficulty to your specific level and learning style. Language learning apps like Duolingo use algorithms to figure out your weak points and give you targeted practice exercises.
Like having a personalized tutor.
Exactly. There are AI systems now designed to teach coding, math, even complex skills through interactive simulations. They can provide immediate, specific feedback, which we know is critical for efficient learning and improvement.
So AI could actually democratize skill development, make high-quality learning more accessible.
That's the hope, and potentially a huge benefit. Imagine everyone having access to something like a personal AI tutor available 24/7, tailored to their needs.
But lifelong learning isn't just about technical skills, right? It's broader than that.
Much broader. It definitely includes acquiring hard skills, like learning a new programming language. But it also encompasses developing critical metacognitive skills, learning how to learn effectively, how to manage your attention, how to reflect on your progress.
And social skills too.
Yes, things like collaborating effectively in virtual teams, communicating across disciplines, and especially critical thinking and media literacy in this age of potential misinformation. These softer skills actually amplify the value of any technical knowledge you acquire.
The futurist Alvin Toffler had that famous quote, something about illiteracy in the 21st century.
Right, a really prescient quote. He said, roughly, the illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn.
And learn and relearn, that sounds key.
It's absolutely key. Unlearning means actively letting go of old ways of thinking, outdated assumptions, methods that no longer serve you well.
Which can be really hard psychologically.
It can be very hard. We get attached to our expertise or familiar routines. It's comfortable. But clinging to them when the world has moved on becomes a trap. It leads straight to obsolescence.
Can you give an example?
Think of a programmer who's an absolute master of an older programming language. They might instinctively resist learning a newer, potentially more efficient language because it means being a beginner again.
Feeling incompetent for a while.
Exactly. But those who are willing to embrace that temporary discomfort, to be novices again in order to eventually master a better tool or approach, they're the ones who will pull ahead in the long run. It requires humility. It requires updating your very identity, shifting from I am an expert in X to I am an expert learner who can become proficient in X, Y, or Z.
That chess example you mentioned earlier fits here too, right? With AI changing the game.
A perfect illustration. AI chess engines like AlphaZero didn't just get better than humans. They discovered completely unorthodox opening moves, strategies that human grandmasters had dismissed for decades as simply wrong.
But they turned out to be productive.
Highly effective in some cases. And this forced top human players to unlearn generations of accumulated dogma. They had to relearn the game, incorporating these AI-influenced insights. The best players now actively partner with AI tools to continually update their understanding of the game.
So practically, what are some techniques people can use right now to become better lifelong learners? What's a concrete step?
Okay, a few concrete things. Reflective practice is incredibly powerful, yet often neglected.
Meaning?
Regularly taking time to think about what you've learned, what went well, what didn't, and how you could approach things differently next time. Even just 10 minutes at the end of the week. You could also do a periodic skills audit. What new tools are emerging in my field? Is any part of my current skill set becoming automated? What's my plan to stay relevant?
Being proactive about it.
Yes. Another big one is time management. People often say, I don't have time to learn.
Yeah, that's a common barrier.
But even carving out just 15-30 minutes a day for focused learning can compound massively over time. Micro-learning can be great here, breaking learning into tiny chunks. Using flashcard apps on your commute. Watching a short instructional video during a coffee break.
Making it fit into the gaps.
Exactly. And don't underestimate the power of community. Learning doesn't have to be solitary. Joining peer groups, online forums, professional networks, where people share knowledge and challenges that can be incredibly motivating and accelerate your learning. Teaching something to someone else is also one of the best ways to deepen your own mastery.
You mentioned becoming T-shaped. What does that mean again?
Right. If you cultivate both the mindset and the discipline of lifelong learning, you tend to develop into what's called a T-shaped individual.
Okay.
The vertical bar of the T represents deep expertise in one or maybe a few core areas. That comes from your focused exploitation and deep dives.
Yeah.
The horizontal bar of the T represents a broad base of knowledge across many different areas and understanding of adjacent fields. That comes from your exploration and continuous learning.
So deep in one area, broad across others.
Exactly. And these T-shaped people are incredibly valuable in the AI era. Why? Because they can understand the big picture, they can communicate across different disciplines, connect the dots, but they also have the depth to make significant contributions in their specific area of expertise.
What stands out to you personally about how AI might challenge or enhance your own learning journey?
For me, it's that duality you mentioned. AI offers these incredible tools to accelerate learning, personalized feedback, instant access to information. It can feel like having a superpowered tutor. But at the same time, the pace of AI development challenges me constantly. It forces me to question my assumptions, to be willing to unlearn things I thought I knew. It's a constant humbling reminder that my mental model of the world needs perpetual updating. It pushes me to be more, Bayesian about my own knowledge.
Makes sense. So the final thought here.
I think it's this. Nobody can predict the exact skills you'll need in 10 or 20 years. The landscape will shift in ways we can't foresee. But if you master the art of learning itself, if you cultivate that adaptive expertise, you'll be equipped to acquire whatever skills are needed, whenever they're needed. That capacity to adapt through learning, that might be the single most enduring competitive advantage any of us can have in the 21st century. It's the ultimate future-proofing.
Okay, we've covered adapting like an evolving species, thinking like a Bayesian statistician, navigating explore, exploit, committing to lifelong learning, but thriving isn't just about individual success or career resilience, is it?
No, absolutely not. That would be a very incomplete picture.
It has to also be about preserving human values, ensuring fairness, thinking about our collective well-being.
Exactly. Which brings us to the crucial ethical and societal dimensions of our coevolution with AI. How do we make sure this powerful technology actually serves humanity?
Where do we start with that? It feels like a huge topic.
A major area of concern, and rightly so, is algorithmic bias. AI systems learn from data. That's their power, but also their potential pitfall.
How so?
If the data they learn from reflects historical biases, existing societal inequities, then the AI can inadvertently learn, reproduce, and sometimes even amplify those biases, often at massive scale.
Can you give an example?
Sure. We saw this clearly with early facial recognition systems. They were found to have much higher error rates for women, and particularly for people with darker skin tones.
Why was that?
Primarily because the data sets they were trained on were overwhelmingly composed of images of white men. The algorithm simply didn't have enough data to learn to recognize other groups as accurately. It wasn't intentional malice. It was biased data leading to biased outcomes.
And this can have real-world consequences.
Absolutely. Think about AI used in hiring, loan applications, or even predictive policing. If the algorithms are biased, they can lead to systemic discrimination, essentially automating past injustices and baking them into future decisions.
So how do we adapt to that? How do we fight algorithmic bias? It seems critical if we want a fair future.
It is. And adaptive thriving here requires constant vigilance and proactive action from everyone.
What can individuals do?
For you, as a citizen or consumer, it means being aware that AI decisions can be biased. It means asking questions, demanding transparency and fairness from companies or institutions using AI systems that affect your life. It means supporting regulations or legislation that might require things like independent audits of algorithms for fairness.
And for people working in tech.
For those building or deploying AI, the responsibility is even greater. It means pushing for better practices within their organizations, actively working to create more diverse and representative training data sets, implementing technical methods to mitigate bias, establishing strong ethical review processes before deploying systems. There's a whole growing field of responsible AI focused on exactly this.
So society needs to create pressure for ethical AI.
Yes, we need to collectively create selection pressures that favor ethical AI applications and discourage harmful ones. If consumers and clients start demanding products that demonstrably respect fairness and privacy, that creates powerful economic incentives for companies to build them.
What are some other major ethical concerns besides bias?
Privacy and autonomy are huge ones. As AI systems get better at analyzing our behavior online and increasingly offline, the potential for pervasive surveillance and subtle manipulation grows.
Let targeted advertising going too far.
That's part of it. We've already seen how AI-driven micro-targeting and content recommendation have been used to try and sway political opinions, sometimes using disinformation, like in the Cambridge Analytica scandal.
Right.
If we're not careful, the unchecked evolution here could lead to a dynamic where the fittest algorithms are simply the ones best at hijacking human attention, maybe through outrage, polarization, or deception, because that maximizes engagement metrics.
That sounds like a pretty bleak evolutionary path.
One we definitely want to avoid. So ethically thriving here means setting clear boundaries, supporting strong data protection laws like GDPR in Europe that give individuals more control over their data, fostering cultural norms where consent and transparency are expected, and practicing good digital hygiene ourselves, being mindful of the data we share, maybe taking breaks from algorithmic feeds to preserve our mental autonomy.
We also need to think about the impact on jobs and maybe human dignity.
Absolutely. As AI automates more tasks, even complex cognitive ones, it inevitably causes workforce displacement. That's the destruction part of creative destruction.
And if we don't manage that transition well,
Inequality could widen significantly. This raises big societal questions about things like universal basic income, UBI, or massive public investment in retraining programs or strengthening social safety nets. From an ethical perspective, an adaptive society would treat this workforce transition as a collective responsibility, not just leave individuals to sink or swim.
ideally AI frees us up from drudgery for more meaningful work.
That's the utopian vision, yes. AI handles the routine stuff, freeing up human potential for more creative, fulfilling, socially valuable pursuits. But making that vision a reality requires conscious planning, proactive policies, and inclusive public dialogue about what kind of future we want. Societal thriving shouldn't just be measured by GDP, but by broad improvements in quality of life, opportunity, and dignity.
And then there are the really long-term, almost science fiction sounding risks, like superintelligence.
Right, the existential perspective.
Yeah.
While the timelines and probabilities are highly uncertain, it would be unwise from a Bayesian perspective to completely dismiss low probability but extremely high impact risks, like the possibility of creating artificial general intelligence, or even superintelligence that isn't properly aligned with human values.
The AI takeover scenario.
Or more subtly, an AI pursuing an objective we gave it, but in a way that has catastrophic unintended consequences because we didn't specify the constraints correctly. This motivates the growing field of AI safety research, trying to figure out how to build powerful AI systems that are provably beneficial and controllable. It also argues for global cooperation on developing these technologies safely.
Beyond those big risks, there's also just the question of maintaining our humanity.
Yes, staying human in the loop means actively safeguarding those aspects of life we cherish beyond pure efficiency. Things like love, creativity, empathy, serendipity, genuine connection, even leisure. There's a subtle risk of technical seduction, becoming so reliant on AI for decisions, for convenience, even for companionship, that we let our own skills atrophy, our own agency erode.
If AI companions become common, do they enhance human connection or replace it?
That's exactly the kind of question we need to be asking. We need to consciously decide what aspects of human experience we want to preserve or augment, and which we are willing to delegate. Again, it comes back to, what are we optimizing for?
And evolution itself doesn't have values. It just optimizes for survival and reproduction.
Precisely. Natural evolution is blind. But cultural evolution, the evolution of our ideas, norms, and technologies, can be guided by our values.
Yeah.
We can choose the direction.
How do we do that with AI?
It involves embedding ethics into engineering education, ensuring diverse, multidisciplinary teams are involved in AI development, not just technologists, engaging the public in meaningful conversations about how AI should be used, what the limit should be.
So being an adaptive citizen means applying critical thinking to these ethical questions too.
Yes, applying that same evidence-based, probabilistic mindset. We need to avoid both naive techno-optimism, AI will solve everything, and paralyzing techno-pessimism, AI will destroy us. The reality is complex, uncertain.
Right.
We need to weigh the evidence, consider multiple possible futures, and work towards the ones we prefer.
Adopting that active optimism you mentioned?
Exactly. The belief that we can shape better outcomes if we work towards them, combined with a realistic acknowledgement of the serious challenges. And our ethics themselves will likely evolve too. New norms will form around AI, just as they did around the printing press or the internet. We need to expect that and participate actively in the ongoing moral dialogue about AI in warfare, AI and human rights, preventing surveillance dystopias. These are global questions requiring diverse perspectives. The very process of grappling with them will be part of humanity's collective Bayesian, updating on moral knowledge.
So thriving is a collective project.
Absolutely. It demands that we adapt not only our skills and our thinking, but also our moral compass to navigate this entirely new terrain. It means anticipating consequences, setting sensible guardrails, and using our human capacity for reflection and empathy to steer the co-evolution of our society and our technology, guided by timeless values like justice, compassion, and human dignity.
Wow. Okay, so we started with that simple image, a child mesmerized by a tablet. Fast forward years, decades maybe, that child will be an adult, navigating a world profoundly shaped by AI, by technologies we probably can't even conceive of yet.
Right.
What's the foundation that will carry her through? What's the core capability she'll need? It can't be just one specific skill or one piece of knowledge.
Because those will almost certainly change, become obsolete.
Exactly, so it must be something deeper.
I believe it is. It's her capacity to continually learn, to adapt with agility, to find meaning and purpose amidst constant change. In short, it's her mastery of adaptive meta-learning.
Meta-learning, learning how to learn, but adaptive.
Yes, it's more than just a set of techniques. It's really an entire outlook, a way of being in the world.
How so?
Adaptive meta-learning means seeing learning itself as the supreme skill, the one that enables all others. It's an outlook where you view every situation, especially setbacks, mistakes, failures, as invaluable feedback. Data to update your internal models of the world.
Like a Bayesian learner, but applied to life itself.
Precisely. It's deeply evolutionary in spirit, too. You treat each experience as a small experiment, each decision as a hypothesis you're testing. When something doesn't work out, it's not a verdict on your worth. It's just a data point telling you to try a different approach.
That sounds incredibly resilient.
It builds profound resilience. Over time, this mindset transforms adversity from something to be feared into fuel for improvement. It reminds me of Nassim Taleb's concept of anti-fragility, the idea of systems or individuals that don't just withstand shocks, but actually get stronger from them. Learning from failure makes you anti-fragile.
And this meta-learning applies to how we think and decide too.
Yes, we talk about Bayesian reasoning as a powerful ideal. In practice, an adaptive meta-learner develops personal heuristics, mental shortcuts, that subtly incorporate that logic without always needing complex math.
Like rules of thumb for better thinking.
Exactly. For example, you might adopt a personal rule. If I feel really certain about something complex, I will deliberately seek out at least one credible source that disagrees with me and genuinely try to understand their argument. That's a practical way to fight your own confirmation bias.
Or setting trigger points for action.
Right. If X indicator in my industry changes by Y%, I will proactively start exploring option Z or begin retraining in area W. It's about building adaptive routines into your thinking.
We also kept coming back to co-evolution, this dance with technology and change. How does meta-learning relate to that?
It means embracing that dance, fully engaging with the world, with its changes, rather than resisting them futilely. The evolutionary Bayesian, the adaptive meta-learner, doesn't fight the current. They learn to navigate it, maybe even harness its energy. They understand they're shaping it, even as they're being shaped by it.
So AI presents challenges, yes, but also opportunities if we engage creatively.
Absolutely. Think of artists using AI image generators not as replacements, but as collaborators, as sparks for new ideas, pushing creative boundaries in ways they couldn't before. That's creative collaboration born from adaptation. It's not seeing AI purely as a threat, but as a potentially powerful amplifier, if guided well.
And that guidance,
Yeah.
it has to come from something beyond just adapting for adaptation's sake.
Crucially, yes. The adaptive meta learner doesn't just ask, how do I adapt? They must also ask, toward what end? What am I adapting for?
Finding your purpose.
Exactly. Thriving ultimately has to be defined by you. Is your goal financial security, intellectual discovery, making a specific contribution to society, finding inner peace? The strategies we've discussed are tools. They're meant to serve your chosen purpose, not dictate it.
So having a clear purpose is actually an adaptive strategy itself.
I strongly believe it is. Having a clear purpose, or a core set of deeply held values, acts like an anchor in the storm of change. Not a rigid anchor that prevents movement, but one that keeps you oriented, prevents you from drifting into directions that feel meaningless or betray your integrity. Purpose guides your adaptation. It tells you which adaptations are desirable, which paths align with who you want to be.
So let's bring it back. Imagine yourself years from now, looking back. The specific technologies will be different, the issues might have shifted.
Almost certainly.
At that interplay, that accelerating dance between human ingenuity and technological power, that seems likely to continue.
It feels like the defining dynamic of our time. And it suggests this isn't a game with a finish line, it's an open-ended journey, an infinite game like evolution itself.
There's no point where you can say, okay, I've adapted enough, I'm done.
Right. And while that might sound exhausting, maybe even Sisyphean,
It could also be seen as liberating.
I think so. It means there will always be more to learn, more to experience, more ways to grow and improve. We are perpetually works in progress. And maybe that's a wonderful thing. The potential for growth is infinite.
So this evolutionary Bayesian mindset we've explored, it's ultimately hopeful.
I see it as hope, grounded firmly in realism. Realism, because it forces us to confront the hard facts. Change is constant. Uncertainty is inherent. Our own minds have limitations.
But hope.
Hope, because it shows that through conscious adaptation, through deliberate learning, through critical thinking, we have real agency. We can tilt the odds. We can find opportunity in chaos. We can innovate solutions even for daunting problems. It doesn't promise an easy ride or a perfect utopia.
What does it offer then?
It offers a roadmap and a set of tools, kind of scientific playbook for navigating the complex, challenging, but also incredibly exciting path ahead. The rest, well, that's up to us.
To walk the path, to iterate, experiment, learn.
To collaborate. Yeah, and to consciously try and steer this powerful coevolution towards outcomes that truly enrich human life.
That child with the tablet, she inherits the world we're shaping right now.
She does. And the hope is we can equip her and her entire generation with the wisdom to be these evolutionary Bayesians, agile learners, critical thinkers, adaptable problem solvers, but also compassionate leaders, people who can thrive alongside AI and, more importantly, guide it toward positive ends for everyone.
So that loop, the child and the algorithm, becomes a virtuous one.
That's the goal. As she learns from AI and AI learns from her, the hope is that both become smarter, wiser, more aligned with what truly matters. This is the infinite game of adaptation. No final winners or losers, just continuous players. And in that game, those who learn, who adapt, and who hold fast to their core values, they won't just survive, they will indeed thrive.